Oh, I love Raz's videos. Why Skyrim?
Of all the information that's out there, this makes it the 8th best-selling game of all time. And what's most impressive about that is that it's one of only 2 games in the top 10 that's single-player only.
I didn't know The Witcher was in the top 10. Is that actually real? Number 10 is The Witcher 3. That's phenomenal. GTA 5 makes sense. Minecraft makes sense. Tetris makes sense. Okay, that all tracks.
Video essayists, game developers, and of course modders, all of whom have kept the game alive in various ways. And to this day, it's...
Okay, you guys know the meme about how, like, don't know what to do, reinstall Skyrim, get a bunch of mods, play it for a bit, get bored, uninstall. And I think it is true. I think this is a real thing people do. Is it just me, or has that finally died off? People don't do it anymore. Well, someone just said they did it 2 months ago. Someone did it this week. Is the Zoomer equivalent of that Minecraft? And then fucking Gen Alpha's gonna do it with Roblox?
It's averaging around 20,000 concurrent players across its Steam version.
That's crazy.
Alone. It is beloved in a way few games ever are. And I often find myself wondering, why?
Bro, me too. Because, I mean, I'll let him get to his points, but Oblivion is better. Straight up. Oblivion is a better game than Skyrim. It's just better, and I'm tired of pretending it's not. The quests are better. The world is better. It's just a better game.
The answer I expect a lot of you will have to this question is simply that it's a great game. And okay, look, I'm not going to claim that everything about Skyrim is terrible. It's not, but there's a lot in it that's really not great.
Yeah.
What makes this notable is that some of the stuff that I would say are the worst aspects of the game are also arguably some of the most important.
Yeah.
For instance, the combat. It is one of the main pillars of the title, and it's kind of a mess. Melee feels floaty and unresponsive, making it so landing a hit doesn't even feel satisfying.
Bro, this is the game. This is most of Skyrim. Fucking killing fucking Draugrs. It's not the worst game I ever made. I still liked it, but it was like, I didn't feel the pull. I guess Skyrim is fun for the time, especially because it's one of the first games where I felt like you could... No, even Oblivion is that. Oblivion was the first game for me. Maybe it's just an age thing, but it was the first game for me where it was like, this world really feels open. Like I can just look down, I can see that mountain over there and I can go there. But, you know, Skyrim might have been that for some other people. But I think by the time Skyrim came out, didn't we have like a lot of open world games?
Magic also feels unsatisfying due to scaling issues and can be incredibly frustrating because of how easy it is to accidentally do damage to allies or just any person hanging around.
I mean, it's still pretty cool.
Especially annoying, as in some instances it leads to people attacking you.
It's tough to call that annoying, right? I remember it's fun. Like you spray fire from your hands, which is badass, and then you hit somebody wrong and then it fucking leads to things spiraling out of control. It's fun in the moment.
My list of issues with the game goes on and on, ranging from the overly simplistic puzzles to the level scaling, to the tedium of travel, to...
That's all you said about the level scaling? I thought the last 20 minutes are gonna be about it. The reason this game sucks is the level scaling, bro. The level scaling is the worst part of Skyrim. It's so stupid. It's bad in Oblivion too. It's the worst part of these fucking games. The coolest part of an RPG is to level up, get really strong, get cool gear, and then come back to the starting area and fuck up the level 1 thieves. But you walk around and everything is scaled to you. Also, one of the coolest things that can happen in an open world RPG, you go, hey, what's in that fucking ominous volcano in the distance? And you walk all the way there and you get there and it's a big fucking dragon that fucks you up. But in fucking Skyrim, everything is to your level. You never ever feel like, oh, I wandered into a truly dangerous area. And then you never get the satisfaction of beating up on things from the beginning because you go back to the beginning and it's like the bandits are wearing fucking full adamantium. It takes all of the soul and joy out of a crafted world RPG. I've always hated it. I've hated it from the beginning, from day one, and I hate it more with time.
And I think it all begins with the audience Bethesda was aiming to capture. Most games out there have a wide range of types of fans, but I've noticed this is especially true with Skyrim. Obviously, there are plenty of longtime fantasy nerds who fell in love with it.
Yeah, it was for everybody. It was a mainstream game. It
also grabbed the attention of a much more casual audience. This is anecdotal, but over the years, I've had many conversations with people who lean on the normie side of the spectrum where we get on the top of the video.
Oh, you normies. You normies and your Skyrim. I get what he's saying, but it's so funny to be like, oh, you're on the normie spectrum and you like Skyrim? Yuck.
Fantasy is an interesting genre in that it feels niche in a lot of ways, and for a while it was, but over the past 20 years or so, it has become no longer just for the nerds.
Sure.
One of the biggest contributors to this shift was the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which released in the early 2000s and achieved levels of success that no one could have ever expected. This gave fantasy games a much larger target demographic to aim towards, helping many
Bro, when it comes to like sci-fi and fantasy, and I don't think there is such a thing as normies anymore. It's all mainstream. I mean, I know there's like niche things you can like, but even D&D is mainstream. Is that what he's saying? No, I'm not disagreeing with him. I'm if anything, I'm agreeing with him. Even Star Wars, I mean, especially Star Wars. Star Wars is like a mainstream Disney property with theme park rides. It's not, D&D is definitely not mainstream. I mean, I'm sure it's not like fucking COD, but D&D is mainstream, bro. It's very popular, well known, accepted. The podcasts are like the #1 in the world. Like they're
Now, the success of Lord of the Rings definitely helped Skyrim in some ways, but a different fantasy series played a much more impactful role in its success. That, of course, being Game of Thrones. The show premiered in April of 2011 and was an immediate success.
Wow, I did not know that Game of Thrones Season 1 and Skyrim lined up that closely. That does seem to have some connection. In my mind, I wouldn't have tracked those two.
Just 7 months after the pilot aired, Skyrim released.
Wow.
A game that takes place in a snow-covered region largely inhabited by people who are seeking independence from their rulers to the south that heavily features a civil war and dragons. Obviously, the game wasn't inspired by the success of the...
No, I mean, that's funny. It's almost like Game of Thrones, the game, came out as a tie-in with the popular new show. That's a shocking timeline. I did not know that.
What's more interesting is that apparently before Skyrim was in development, George R. R. Martin's team reached out to Bethesda to pitch a game set in the world of A Song of Ice and Fire, but Bethesda decided they'd rather make a game in their own world, which does make the similarities between the two feel a little funny in hindsight.
We'd rather make a game in our own world. We'd rather make a game close enough that we get all the 100% of the upside for. Instead of giving fucking 60% to you.
Whenever someone, whether it be a longtime fantasy fan or a person newer to the genre, wanted to play or experience something that felt similar to Game of Thrones, Skyrim was the obvious choice, as no other game at the time came anywhere close to matching the show's scope and tone until The Witcher 3 came out in 2015. And that's kind of wild, as there actually was a Game of Thrones game, and it was something. While this synergy was largely coincidental, Bethesda did seemingly capitalize on it with their marketing, most notably with the live-action trailer that came out a few weeks before the game did. It is very Game of Thrones coded. Honestly, it could have easily been mistaken for a Season 2 teaser trailer. When asked about the similarities, people...
Damn, they fucking leaned into it. That's funny. I didn't remember this or know this, but it does track. That's super funny.
Bethesda still faced the challenge of figuring out how to market a high fantasy game to a mainstream audience. In a talk that a few members of Skyrim's marketing team gave at the Game Marketing Summit in 2012, they discussed how they didn't want to apologize for what the game was, but did want to find a way to present it that felt more approachable. To do this, instead of featuring the wide range of mechanics in the game, they leaned more into Skyrim's cinematic elements. This is evident with the live action trailer.
I mean, of course, though. I get it, but of course, you don't put the fucking crafting menu in your trailers. Yeah, of course you lean into the cinematic. You fight the dragon fights.
After an action-packed montage, it cuts back to the hero who defeats the dragon and absorbs its power. An experience you'd expect to be exceedingly rare, but then the camera pushes out again, showing a stunning landscape with another dragon casually perched on some old ruins. Not only does this provide viewers with an easy little story to follow and be intrigued by, but it also shows off how much bigger the world is than this single moment. It promises a game with countless epic encounters.
Makes you want to play it right now.
Dragon around every corner, an experience that is bigger than you can imagine. The cinematic approach allowed them to portray the fantastical elements of the world in game in a way that didn't feel like nerd shit. But for the nerds watching, they could easily see all of the nerd shit within it, making it effective for both audiences. One issue with presenting a limited...
I like how the example of nerd shit is him torching a mud crab to death slowly.
Where a lot of cinematic trailers at the time didn't really resemble the gameplay or even visuals of the
Dude, I remember that trailer.
Skyrim's was made in engine, so what people saw largely was what they ended up getting. Instead of constantly promoting the game, they valued restraints. They would keep people hungry for more content. The campaign started on December 11th, 2010 with the announcement trailer, and was followed by the official trailer a few months later. But after that, they scaled back a fair bit to not oversaturate their messaging.
No, that's smart. Gamers' imaginations are always better than whatever you can show. The less you show is almost always better because then gamers build up the game they want in their minds. They get attached to that game, and they hyper defend it. Then they will be fucking fighting for you. Dude, the funniest thing is when gamers get so hyped for a game, then the game reviews come out, but the game isn't out yet, and the gamers get mad at the reviews before the game is out and they've played it. The idea of showing not so much, I think is good. I mean, here's a great example right now. So Star Wars Outlaws. Have you guys seen this game? Star Wars Outlaws had me hyped. I was imagining this really fucking awesome game. And they started showing more gameplay, and now I'm like not hyped at all. They showed this fucking...
As such, the blaster battles felt like they had meaningful stakes, and the stealth gameplay had a bit of weight to it because I knew that I'd be up against it.
When I saw the first trailer, I was like, this looks so sick. And then they just started letting actual gameplay come out, and then it looks so Ubisoft coded. I mean, that's a great example. I don't think Skyrim would have had this problem, but it's just funny that they thought about this.
People love playing it, even though it has problems. After starting a new playthrough of the game and approaching it with as open of a mind as possible, in my estimations at least, there are two main reasons for this. The first being that most of the ways in which Skyrim is quote-unquote bad were designed that way in order to be approachable to the wide audience they had just captured. There's this talk I think about a lot from Derek Yu, the designer of the Spelunky series, where he discusses the idea of spiky design versus soft design. Essentially, spiky design is stuff that causes friction for the player, that sometimes feels unintuitive, but gets them in a state of focus and at its best creates this sense that they are in a world that could exist without them. Where soft design is stuff that prioritizes player comfort, always aiming to avoid negative emotions in regards to interactivity so that players have a smooth experience.
Interesting.
All games contain some amount of both types of...
Do you guys think I have a soft stream or a spiky stream? Is it optimized for your comfort, or is it kind of like... Well, it's not that spiky. It's not like I'm rude to chat.
Skyrim has a ton of soft design. Many of its mechanics feel frictionless. That's not to say there are never obstacles that slow the player down or even halt their progress, but for the most part, all of its major systems are easy to engage with and can be engaged with regardless of the type of character you've made. Doing something for one faction won't stop you from doing something for another, so there rarely are meaningful consequences to actions, which is appealing to those who worry about missing things and messing up their game. Ultimately, a lot of designs, like this is why it has level scaling. It makes it so that in most cases, if the player finds a quest they want to do, they can do it right away. For those who...
Boo! Wow, that's who ruined it. The casuals. The fucking casuals. Now I know. The game was ruined. The people on the normie spectrum.
I still believe that Skyrim would have been a much better game if its combat and role-playing asked for more from players, but I also think far more people would have bounced off of it if that were the case.
Well,
With all that said,
Elden Ring didn't sell as much as Skyrim, but Elden Ring kind of proved that, you know, people might not bounce off of it. They might do more than you think. Elden Ring sold a fuck ton of copies. I think they did the right thing for the time, and Skyrim did super well, but the idea that people can't handle it, so you should handhold them to make more money, is not necessarily true. Something unique and well-made will stand out and get success. Elden Ring is more casual-friendly than any other Souls game. I think it's a fair point. But Skyrim could have had some of that, and it would not have been as big of a risk as they were making it out to be.
It does have a fair bit of spiky design as well, a lot of which helps accentuate my favorite bits of the game. For instance, it does a lot of stuff that cultivates a powerful sense of place. Every object in the game is a physical thing that can be interacted with. They can be...
I love that. Especially as a kid, I thought it was so cool to steal things. I know that sounds like I'm a fucking kleptomaniac, but like, I don't know. It's very, very satisfying in Skyrim to walk around stealing. You know, yeah, putting a bucket on their head and yoinking the shop, always fun. Or getting caught stealing and then it was all fun. When you like going to a shop and seeing physical items there was always cool because other RPGs didn't do that.
But it also creates an almost tactile sense to the things you're engaging with.
Oh yeah.
You have to spot what you might need and decide what's actually useful.
Yeah, Skyrim also did food really well. That's underrated, I think. All the different actual pieces of food on every table and all over the world. That's something uniquely, quirkily Skyrim that felt cool.
I do have issues with how it's incorporated, but at the very least, it prompts some level of thoughtfulness about what you're grabbing. I think it could be argued that the game's reliance on menuing also adds to this feeling, as even with hotkeys, there are so many items
the menu sucks,
you'll likely cycle between that you'll never cover them all. So whether it be the favorites menu or the main menu, you'll be pausing the action regularly and scrolling through everything you have, as there is no real way to sort stuff to get to the things you want to use. In theory, reminding you about all the other things you have.
I think this shit was annoying as hell, actually. I think Skyrim is a perfect game for, they should have had a magic bag with weightlessness, just to explain it away. Going through the menu and having to fucking move things around and drop things to try and, maybe it helped with immersion, but I don't feel like it. I feel like it was just annoying.
Furthermore, even though the game scales to your level, there are some enemies placed around the world with set levels and others who start at a much higher level than the Dragonborn before they start scaling. This leads to some big difficulty spikes where you need to figure out how to deal with an enemy that you don't have a good chance of defeating by typical means. On this playthrough, I was given a quest from the companions to take out some vampires, and it all felt like an appropriate challenge until just before the end where a master vampire blocked my way. As I was far under his level and had no shot of out damaging him, I instead kited him over to a ledge, charmed him so he wouldn't be hostile, lined things up as best as I could, and then somewhat messily knocked him off. And it felt
badass.
So good to do.
That's like the favorite thing in games. That's so, I love this.
To a ledge,
There's nothing more satisfying than doing something like this. It's the peak. It's gaming peak. I get such a rush. It's like, that's why playing Teardown is so fun. You always feel like you're doing something like this every round.
Honestly, even the fact that the game doesn't have interesting movement mechanics means your focus will mostly be on just looking around, helping you get a better lay of the land and appreciate the beauty of the place you're in.
I don't know if he has mods on, but the game still looks good. I'll also give that. Skyrim's a good looking game.
In the documentary, You're Finally Awake, 9 developers recount the making of Skyrim, there's a quote from Dennis Mahiones, one of the game's character artists, that I keep coming back to, which is, "It's not that we did any one thing first or any one thing better, it's that we did it all for the first time." The thing is, it's not just that they did it all for the first time, it's also that no other game has really done it all again since, at least not to the same degree. And this is the other major reason I think Skyrim continues to be so popular to this day. No other game feels like it. Sure, plenty of open world games have incorporated ideas from Skyrim, but the vast majority of them have taken far more influence.
Raz has played many more games than me, so I trust him when he says that. Is that true? BG3 is arguable? Well, BG3 is not as casual friendly.
But ultimately, it is less about the experience of playing through the game than it is about playing in it. For these reasons and more, Skyrim has created a loyal following. By appealing to a massive audience but delivering an experience that feels deliberate in significant ways, they hooked millions of people. And many of those people are willing to buy multiple versions of the game so that they can keep
They have re-released it so many times. The only thing is, I feel like people do that out of a sense of nostalgia and never get it again. The core experience of replaying Skyrim is that it never lives up to what you hoped it would. You're just chasing the dragon, literally and figuratively.
But also, I think there is a ton of value in it being an entry point to video games, or at least these kinds of video games, for so many people. Skyrim came out at a perfect time to reach a new audience, and Bethesda did a stellar job in grasping that audience and design.
Y'all think Elder Scrolls 6 is gonna suck or nah? Real talk. Do you think they're actually gonna get a new engine at this point? Is it gonna be Starfield-esque? Because I'll lose it. They've got to at this point, bro. For Elder Scrolls 6, for the fucking sequel to Skyrim, I think Starfield had to be a wake-up call. It would be crazy if they tried to run the same fucking gambit again. It's just too late. It's been too long. I thought those videos were really good. I learned a lot from that. I actually didn't know about the Game of Thrones thing, and I hadn't really thought about how it marketed itself to a broader audience.